All right.
Hello, and welcome to Woman with Bunny Ears, Season 2, Episode 4, where we will be discussing Trapped in the Closet, chapters 1 through 33, which is parts 1, 2, and 3. Uh, and we're going to have a good old time. I am your host, um, a man who keeps waving a gun around at every point in a conversation. Flashy man. This is your co-host, the second R. Kelly, who explains the actions of the first R. Kelly while in the same room as him. Jason.
Hello.
This is a very special guest, the big man, the Sultan of Swing.
Well, well, well. Look what we have here.
And joining us also is another very special guest. Why don't you introduce yourself? Because I don't know what handle you want to go by here.
Hi, I'm Shakes.
All right, excellent. Well, what a movie, huh, folks? Or if it even is a movie, I don't know.
It's
Really
an
was something.
experience.
The musical.
Yes, it's sort of a poetic epic, really, when you get right down to it.
I mean, it is kind of structured like the Odyssey, or well, not structured, but kind of the synopsis plot of coming back to your wife and coming home. But that gets
Yeah.
resolved in the first 5 chapters.
It also
Anybody
rhymes
want
a
to
lot.
everybody want to discuss their own personal history with this piece of media? Whether they saw it all for the first time this evening or have kept it close in their heart for years before?
Sure. First, I watched it this evening for the first time, although I had heard about it, so I'd been meaning to watch it for years at this point, but not meaning very hard. So,
What did you expect?
from this,
Yeah,
that's my secret, Jason. I go into things expecting nothing, and so I'm always surprised. I'm
that's a
like,
good
whoa,
secret.
yeah. I assumed a man was going to be trapped in a closet at some point, and he was barely trapped in a closet. He was like intentionally in the closet. That's
Yeah,
I'm asking for my money back.
and he was in control of the situation the whole time because he had a gun. So
True.
the threat in the closet. He's the only guy in there with a gun. He's fine.
He's really trapping them outside the closet when you get right down to it, and that's the real moral of the story, not that fake shit
Yeah,
R. Kelly tells us in part 3.
I'll have to bleep that
Um.
out.
Oh.
But
Oh
being
no.
trapped
That
in the
fake
closet was the
dude.
inciting incident.
Yes. Just say the word "dupe" kind of in your singing voice and dub it over
Dude.
there. Which they did for one of these chapters, and only
Not
one.
any others.
Yeah. Maybe we just got a weird copy that gave us the censored
Yeah.
version, but
Well,
only for
see,
one.
the torrent description, the guy was complaining that every other version of this is like bad because they're using censored things, or the video quality's low. And so he curated the best sources he could to try and make the definitive version. But I assume maybe he couldn't find a uncensored version for that specific chapter, or maybe he
Mm.
liked the dupe so much he just left it in as a kind of a personal preference. And I
They're
think
Yep.
it was a good
probably
artistic choice.
they're probably duping like every swear word in every chapter. That's probably just
Yeah.
how they do it.
That's a lot of the dialogue.
It was
Yeah,
nice that not only was R. Kelly all of the voices, he was also all the sound effects. Got to hear his
that is
ringing
true.
phone voice.
Yes.
The police sirens.
Ring, ringing, ringing.
But
Yes.
let's go on. So, Jason, what's
Uh,
your background with Trapped in the Closet?
I listened to
he's
the
been trapped
Weird
in the
Al
closet
parody.
his whole life.
I actually, when I was in middle school, my cat died, and I was really sad about it. And then my dad bought me the Weird Al album, Straight Out of Linwood, which he parodies this song. And I listened to that album over and over again for a while, and that helped me forget about the cat. And then, like 10 years later, I went and listened to the actual Trapped in the Closet and thought, my God, this is much better than the Al version. But I hadn't seen part three until tonight. Uh,
Yes, it's a
part three
curious
was
thing.
weird, but I rewatch the first two parts often. It's quite near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
Definitely.
All right.
Jakes?
Yeah, Shakes. Go ahead.
I'm in a similar boat as Jason. I remember when Weird Al's parody came out, although I did watch some of it in middle school and high school, and I remember it only tenuously. So rewatching it recently was interesting because you appreciate things in a different way than when you're a moody high schooler who has to believe that everything that's popular is trash and bad.
Was this so popular that you considered it trash and bad?
It was popular enough to get a Weird Al parody.
Fair enough. Fair enough. I guess if we're mentioning it, I should mention that I have seen the Weird Al parody, or at least part of it, and I remember almost none of it. So
It's
that did not
designed
really.
not to be memorable. It's designed to be a incredibly uninteresting story with a kind of the tension, the music not matching what's going on. So this was by design.
Yes.
All
You have
right.
been tricked.
I feel like I might be unique among y'all for not having actually seen the Weird Al version until after I had seen the original. I also still
What
have
are you
yet.
even doing here?
I also still have yet to see the South Park episode titled "Trapped in the Closet." But
That's a strange
so
claim to fame.
yeah, so my first encounter with the concept of "Trapped in the Closet" came in my senior year of high school. I was taking an American pop culture class as an English substitute, essentially. So you got to choose two like English classes. It was American pop culture for me, and we'd recently been introduced to the idea of advanced genius theory, propagated by, I believe, Chuck Klosterman. And inherent to that theory was that essentially, as geniuses acquire a level of mainstream success and recognition, they start to be able to make things without regard for like executive standards. They start to have a license to do things that they had always wanted to do all along. And that's how we get things like the prequel trilogy. It's like how we get Lou Reed's Metal Machine music album, which is just like a lot of clanging metal sounds for an album length, released by the front man of the Velvet Underground. And we were all tasked to come up with an example of what we considered to be an example of the advanced genius theory. One of my classmates identified Trapped in the Closet as their example of R. Kelly's advanced genius, that he could start to create things like this with no regards for whether it would be commercially successful or anything like that. So after that, I saw the first part, chapter one, not part one, just chapter one, and thought, well, that sure is odd. I guess I'll return to that later.
How does
Then I
chapter
don't
one
know.
end?
It's it's the one that memorably ends with. Then he looks at the closet. He stares at the closet. I pull out my Beretta. He comes up to the closet. Now his hands in the
Yeah.
closet. Now he's opened up the closet. Yeah. So
Well, you're
somehow
still
I was
making
able
those
to
crooner bucks.
yeah, somehow I was able to put it down on that cliffhanger and walk away from it
Impressive.
and come back to it about 2 years later, thinking, "Gee, I never did follow up on that." And then followed up marathoned up to part 22, which was all that was available at that time without paying. Definitely stuck with me, but this evening is the first time that I've seen part three, so chapters 23 through 33. And yeah, I'd hazard saying that it's a bit of a step down in quality from the brilliance of the first two parts, but still interesting enough to fill an evening.
Agree with that. Does anyone happen to know, like, the history? I sort of got the sense as we got further into part three, like, ooh, there's a lot of green screen going on here. Did they switch mediums or something? I mean, there's already just great green screen when Sylvester is driving in his car and stuff. It's just impeccable green screen.
It was just cheaper.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess so.
Well, it had kind of a lo-fi aesthetic. I mean, especially that when he's driving in his car. Like, I think they like, yeah, it's cheaper and it looks bad, and I think they knew that. So they said, okay, we're going to make this just incredibly over the top, and it's going to fit the vibe. And then the production values kind of seem to shift in the third part, and things get, they seem more polished, but it also kind of feels plastic.
Yeah. I mean, maybe they did the green screen so that God could make that cameo.
Oh yeah, I forgot God was in this.
Yes,
That's true. Special guest. God.
it's the God seal of approval.
Yeah.
True. They didn't need a green screen for that, though. They could have done, a real life shot and then done a simple brightening effect on the sky. That's my opinion.
Well, I mean, I do think that God is kind of a central character in any story, um, but in this case, I'm struggling to think of like, does he intervene anywhere? Is there anything that seems like Providence?
I was struck by how often the characters, refer to themselves being Christian and how they can settle this in a Christian way and stuff.
Well,
Interesting thing.
Rufus was a pastor, and I believe they said that Chuck
That's
was a
true.
deacon.
Yeah, yeah. But no, I didn't see a lot of divine intervention here, except, of course, for the remarkable series of coincidences, or whatever you want to call them.
I mean,
God
besides God punishing them with AIDS for being homosexuals.
Mm. In the
for
rent
being
arc, trapped in the closet.
for being within three partners of a homosexual.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Well, and for being black.
Mm, mm.
Naturally. Yeah, so it didn't dawn on me until the rewatch, but with within the timetable that they were showing, wouldn't really
Right.
have much opportunity for the package to go more than like three people down. Because
Yeah,
I mean that chain of partners stretched from Chuck, Rufus, Kathy, Sylvester, Gwendolyn, James, Bridget, and Big Man. But logically, it could have been broken off at Sylvester because he had only slept with Kathy and hadn't had the opportunity to sleep with Gwendolyn since then.
Well, they almost abandoned the concept entirely. Like, because I mean, I was expecting part three to be a sort of now everybody has AIDS and they're dealing with the fallout.
Yeah, exactly.
That would have been
yeah.
very interesting. But
They just kind of forget about it.
well, I think maybe R. Kelly he might have found it embarrassing to have AIDS as his fictional self, or everybody having it. It's a stigma.
They do ask him about the package on the fake
A reality TV show
television show. Yeah.
on TE. Maybe that was the one that was hosted by Larry.
Ah, but
Totally not
Sylvester.
Larry King.
Yeah.
Maybe he was Larry Springer. Mm.
Hmm.
Well,
Possibly.
I think Wikipedia said the show is called like uh, Larry's like closet confession. It has some kind of trapped in the closet name. I
Out
don't
of
know
the
if that's
closet with Larry.
some. Yeah, I think that's it. Yeah, so it's a confessional show,
Yeah.
and I don't know who Larry is, but he. We're gonna go with Larry King.
We'll find that
Yeah,
out
I feel
when
like
R.
that's
Kelly gets out of
is,
prison for his nefarious crimes.
or when they bring. They allow him to produce the rest of the series from prison. Because honestly, if I was a prison manager, prison architect, I'd make that a priority, prison design.
That's true. We finally got R. Kelly into this prison, boss. Excellent. Now set up the studio.
Well, isn't R. Kelly a menace to society whose, work should be kept out of the spotlight, so we don't have, you know,
Yeah, I mean,
criminal being
Spotify got rid
glorified.
of all his catalog, didn't they?
Oh, did they? That's tragic.
I believe so.
Yeah, his music's great.
I don't know. For R. Kelly, I'll reuse a line that I originally heard with regards to Rolf Harris, which was, "He's an amazing entertainer. Shame about his other habits."
It's a shame.
Just thinking, actually, Sylvester did sleep with his wife, but that was after James had slept with his wife
Well, and she wore a
at any
condom.
point. Yes.
A female
At
condom?
least once.
Oh, well, I guess he did.
Yeah.
Yeah. Still, and, who knows how it got around to Pimp Lucius.
Yeah. Well,
Yes. Pimp
I mean,
Lucius seemed to be the character that God was most interested in intervening on behalf of.
True.
well, it was interesting because all of these characters are sort of deeply immoral, but they were still all disgusted by the pimp. It's he was crossing a line too far.
Yeah, by that point in the story, that might not be, like, such a statement and might instead just be forgetting about what happened earlier in the story. But, maybe they all need to front.
Maybe. Well, no, I think even like when they encounter Pimp Lucius outside the barber shop, they're like on the way to go commit more crimes.
Yeah.
True, but they're done cheating on everybody.
Right, right.
Which, honestly, part 3 could have used some more revelations about people cheating on people. I think that
Honestly,
would have
maybe
picked it
that
up.
was how R. Kelly was furthering the theme with Sylvester and Twan getting into multiple heist plans with like Joey and Bino that don't plan out because
Oh,
instead of cheating on their women, they were cheating on their heists, cheating
yeah.
on their partners in crime.
In the beginning of Trapped in the Closet, I did not really get the impression that Sylvester was doing crime because he's very focused on not going back to prison.
He just doesn't get
Although,
caught.
yeah, I
Yeah,
suppose so. So.
So
it's
Sylvester's a
Twan
very
who
smart man.
it's Twan who got caught. Then he
Yeah.
was trying to change his life around.
Through
Flipped upside
Sylvester's
down.
guidance.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I wonder if R. Kelly feels that way because he's probably by far the smartest man that he's in regular contact with. He kind of has this entourage and sex cult and all these things. He has to manage them all, and he clearly has a deep understanding of people's psychology. And so, like I was thinking about that doctor character, who was being a therapist and giving all this good advice and such. And I kept thinking that I bet R. Kelly spends like most of his days or a large portion of them just kind of doing that for his friends, family, and the people around him because he's such a smart man.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you
He could
think
just solve
maybe
all the problems.
he flew too close to the sun? He was trying to pull off another job, and then prison time.
I think it was
It
the
probably does give a
documentary.
lot of good advice.
He's probably counseling prisoners right now.
Yeah. Yeah, he's made a success of himself. Could teach them all about business strategies, self promotion.
Well, and speaking of Providence, that's kind of an ironic punishment. I mean, but he's trapped in a jail now.
Yes, he's trapped in the jail cell. He looks at the jail cell.
Why is it ironic punishment that he's
Just
trapped
because
in
he's
a jail?
trapped in a place, yeah.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
It's not. It's a
A
stretch,
jail
but
a jail cell is like a closet in a way, especially if the closet has those like Venetian blinds or slattered shades or whatever you call them. that every closet in this setting seems to have for dramatic and cinematographic purposes.
Yeah, they cast those slat-like light sources, like tiger stripes.
Well, the one exception was when the midget big man was hiding under the sink,
True, he
and
was he was trapped in a cupboard.
yeah, and that
Yeah,
scene it was a repetition of the motif.
Right.
And I think Shakes you pointed out his inhaler, which uh, you know that's his
substitute for a gun.
weapon. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Ooh,
Yeah,
I
he
got
did seem to have
hospitalized.
heart problems, considering how much he was fainting.
Yeah, I thought they
Yeah.
were just gonna kill him because he was like, "I got heart problems." Falling over. Yeah.
Well,
The
for
midget
all the
faints
guns,
again.
very few people get killed. I mean, nobody gets killed, or one guy gets shot and then he
In the
brushes it
shoulder.
They're
off.
fine.
Yeah, didn't even really take surgery. Just puts a bandage
Yep.
on in the
Yeah.
bathroom mirror.
Glancing wound,
Pass through.
spewing
Maybe,
buckets of
maybe,
blood.
maybe bounced off a scapula or something.
I think that part of the logic of the story is that nobody could get killed, not because somebody dying would be out of place thematically or tonally, but as the work develops, every character has a story. R. Kelly spins off the main thread into several different threads, chasing down most of the characters who appear early in the beginning. And so for anybody to die, R. Kelly would have to cut off some quality that he could save and explore later. Right? There's a definite quality with the first characters shown that there's some smaller story that spirals out into larger stories. And as the series progresses, it really becomes about the whole community and all of the different people because there are so many intersections that it's no longer the point of view of just one R. Kelly. There's half a dozen characters that R. Kelly plays. And so
Yes.
you could kill somebody, but then the community would have to deal with that because it becomes almost a love letter to the kinds of places that R. Kelly grew up in. And it's probably much more interesting to explore the different characters and the different relationships he's spun up instead of dealing with a death.
True.
I know
True.
you mentioned earlier that I guess part of the more weakened sense of Act 3 is compared to, well, Part 3 is compared to Parts 1 and 2. The sense that it's started to delve more into developing the character relationships that we already know, as opposed to introducing new ones and exploring how they fit in with the rest of the cast and interlink with the people we've already met. Apart
Or
from, I guess, Beano. I guess Beano is the major character that they introduce. He
yeah, well,
doesn't
he
really
wasn't
seem
very
to.
compelling.
Yeah, no more than like Joey. Also wasn't compelling, apart from R. Kelly doing his fantastic white voice for Joey.
I think at this many characters, you kind of get into like a soft Dunbar's number, to where it would be too much work to keep up with more of them and see the community relationships and have enough time to spotlight them. What you were saying, Shakes, about somebody dying, I'm not sure that sort of intensity is established here. You could take it any of the characters, and none of them really feel I I don't know. I mean, they're kind of they're selfish. They're like when they think Tuan is dead, they kind of nonchalantly have this argument. Well, they're arguing about who shot him or see what you did, or they're still wrapped up in the drama of the situation. And then he comes back and oh, he's fine, but it just isn't. It didn't have the weight that it should, given everybody actually knowing and being close to Tuan.
Yeah, in the sense that I guess Twan's barely been introduced. The only person that we know him in relation to is Gwendolyn, and he never really interacts with her for the rest of his screen time. I know about their relationship is that she considers him her baby brother and is convinced that he's trying to turn his life around.
Yeah, he seems to be closer to her husband than he is to his own sister.
Yeah. I mean, brothers-in-law, you know?
Yeah, they're brothers.
Hmm. Interestingly, brothers-in-law could be, what was it? Either your sibling's spouse, your spouse's sibling, or your sibling's spouse's sibling.
I like your
I don't
point,
know.
Jason, about the Dunbar number. There's a sort of limit to how many characters you can digest in this work. At a certain point, it becomes counterproductive for R. Kelly to keep introducing more and more characters. And he starts focusing on new episodes in the lives of the ones that he's already introduced.
Yeah, well, it's so compelling unexpectedly in the first two parts as he introduces these characters because I think I mean not to speculate too much, but like like let's say Tuan, right? Tuan is he's introduced just as a kind of like for the sake of the story to have a kind of piece of dramatic tension. Somebody's been shot, and at first we can't tell who. We think it was the wife, and then and they're talking. We don't see what happened, and then finally, oh, there it is. It's my brother. It's the big reveal, and that's his only role. Um, and then then he's kind of the like the second protagonist. I'm forgetting the word for it, but he ends up becoming
Deuteragonist?
compelling. Yes, yes, and he has a whole life to him, and he ends up being one of the deeper characters, but this is sort of, um, you can tell this is kind of tapped on, and then R. Kelly, through his advanced genius, just kind of makes it work. And he does this with all the characters that are introduced, Big Man and his the Southern woman, Pimp Lucius, the nosy neighbor. That's a big one. That uh, she has a little minor role again. It's just a piece of dramatic tension. She's just a prop for a joke. And then all of a sudden, you get these incredibly heartfelt scenes between her and her husband, who's also played by Kelly. It's just
It's a touching portrait in the history of a lengthy marriage.
So I think that any really great work has to have a sort of dramatic logic. And different works have different kinds of logic. You're set up to expect different things. But when you're in part one, 10 minutes ago, Flashy was talking about how there's a sort of series of coincidences that make up uh, Trapped in the Closet. And in part one, that's the dramatic logic, right? You pretty much know that the end of every chapter in part one, there's going to be some twist, and it's somebody was cheating on somebody else, and there's some secret information that's divulged at the end of the chapter. And if you were to sit and to try to put this in a real life situation, it doesn't exactly, nobody has these kinds of complicated tangles happening to them. But it's the dramatic logic of part one where you have at the end of this chapter, oh, secretly, even though I was cheating on you, you were also secretly gay. And oh, even though you know at
Got him.
this that somebody is going to be cheated on, you weren't expecting it to be a midget, right? And so there's this whole tension that R. Kelly sets up where you know that some twist is coming, but he subverts you with the twist. And that's the dramatic logic of part one. But I think with what you were saying, Jason, about something like Dunbar's number, there's a sort of limit to what you can do with that. You can't make that interesting forever. And so part two actually has a different dramatic logic where instead of having these twists that come with the same regularity as part one, each chapter in part two takes the characters from part one and extends on them or gives them some background. So you have a scene where Tuan goes to the diner and finds out that the woman who turned on him is there. And then the twist is that she's in a relationship with her coworker. There's a lesbian relationship. And so there's still a twist. It's still similar to the logic from part one, but it's no longer in the same context because you're developing all of these characters that were in part one, and it's not being introduced for the first time. Part three has an entirely different dramatic logic, and that's probably a separate discussion on its own because three almost feels like a different work. But I definitely think there's a difference between part one and part two, and part two extends on part one partially because of Dunbar's number and the limits R. Kelly has at this point in just doing part one forever.
Yeah, to your point, I sort of see the plot structure as almost paralleling the process by which an individual's brain matures over the course of their life. It's like when they're going through childhood, they're forming all sorts of new connections and maturing the brain cells that they have. Then eventually, you hit a certain maximum number of brain cells and connections that you can form, and spend the rest of the process of your maturation just deepening the connections and making the connections between them more efficient. And possibly the reason why there's a bit of a drop off in quality in part three is that R. Kelly, unfortunately, isn't really as interested in people whose brains have fully matured, and that's the reason why he's in prison right now.
Sick burn. Sick burn.
They do
Yeah.
seem almost all of the characters. I know they have a very one-dimensional quality to them that I think is kind of charming. Like it doesn't. I know they're all like cartoon people. They have like the nosy neighbor. She's nosy, and she's introduced, and then she kind of argues with her husband. And there's the scene where oh, he's got this big secret for her. And, she doesn't want to know. She doesn't care. She's mad at him, and then, she kind of she mentions the pastor, and all of a sudden she's dying to know, and then she has to go out and tell everybody because she's the gossip. She's the nosy neighbor. It really. He's taken this one character description to spun the whole thing out of it. Tuan is a hothead. It's hard to really characterize Sylvester. He seems like maybe the only like fully developed person there, but it's oh well, something like that you were saying about the logic of part two, Shakes, is it seems like in part two, because the characters have gotten a little more fleshed out, the dramatic tension can switch from oh, there's a twist now to actual like decisions the characters are going to make, or quirks about the personality, like in that scene in the diner. There is a dramatic tension, just with props and new information being revealed, like, oh, she's a lesbian, blah, blah, blah. But the real heart of that scene is, is Tuan going to change his ways? Is she going to get back with him? These are real people, and they're having a real moment here that isn't just based on a twist. And,
Yeah,
and
part one is almost like a pileup of cars, and and you're just watching this chain of dominoes just progressively get more and more outlandish, more and more people getting sucked into this thing. And part two is definitely a little more personal. You have people making decisions and choices. It's what you were saying about the nosy neighbor in part one. She's just a bit part. She's just a stereotype and a punchline. And part two, she actually has scenes where she is a character with decisions and responsibilities and desires and feelings.
Yeah, I feel like maybe the equivalent of was it the cliffhanger from part two about the package that isn't really picked up on in part three is the fact that in climax of part one you've got the revelation of all this explosive series of affairs of all these, some of which have like resulted in pregnancy, some of which have potentially resulted in the transmission of STDs, and you'd expect that to translate into a lot more interpersonal fallout between all the people involved. But really, the only couple for whom that's shown to still be an issue is the Rufus, Kathy, and Chuck love triangle, and even then, only because you've got Kathy and Chuck vying for Rufus's affections. whereas Gwendolyn seems to pretty straightforwardly forgive Sylvester, maybe on the grounds of like, well, I was cheating too, so I can't really hold it against him.
Just laughing it off on the
Yep.
floor there.
We don't really see the fallout for James and Bridget's relationship. Maybe just because they're not interesting enough characters for the narrative to focus on. We know that James is the only person to actually hit a woman in the entirety of Trapped in the Closet. A lot of people threaten to, but he's the only one who goes through with it. So you'd think that the revelation that she was pregnant with a baby who was fathered by a black midget stripper would really be like dropping a bomb into that couple's marriage. But if that's the case, we don't really see much of it.
I believe it's implied that Lucius is the one who hit. I'm forgetting her name. The waitress, Twan's
Tina.
girlfriend. Yeah, his baby mama. Who's a pimp hitter, and that gives her the eye issue. And I believe at one point there's a lot of dialogue that implies that pimp was Lucius, or that she was whoring for him. Yeah, he mentions her. He's like he knows Tina, and he's the pimp, so I would assume he hits her.
Probably. She gave her that nervous condition,
Yeah,
holding
so.
a twitching eye and spilling a lot of water.
And maybe that explains their disgust towards Lucius. Maybe it's not, just the pimping, but the pimping is a sort of, it's a catch-all for all his other sins. I mean, his own parents won't even let him sleep in their house.
I still think the core of part 2 is still twists. Like in that diner scene, I think I could count you out like 6 twists. Like, oh, yeah, I recognize her. That's Tina. And then,
Yeah, that was.
we're
I feel like that was one of the
I'm at the
most
same place
grand
as her.
coincidences. Yep.
Yeah.
I mean,
And there's even
there are a lot of twists, but I feel like the big twist in that scene, the one that's like really is most shocking, is when Twan says "fuck it," and then he kind of bangs his chest and he says like, "Do you want to work this out?" Because we.
yeah.
But before that, and even just in the logic of the story, we haven't seen any characters develop, so we didn't know that was allowed in this world. And then he does it. He says, "I'm going to change my ways. I'm going to do it," and then that's subverted by a further gay twist. But
Yeah. I don't know if that's so
Because
different from like the twist earlier on when the guy is reacting to his wife cheating on him with Sylvester, and then he like calls up his lover, and it's another guy, and that's like an even further twist.
yeah,
It's a
and
character action that moves you.
we don't know if Chuck has other partners in addition to Rufus, but I feel like it's implied with the package. But then again, it's possible that he was just in the hospital for like a concussion or something. That was always my takeaway from the first time I saw that. It was like, it's possible that it isn't AIDS at all. It's just like something completely innocuous that's just inflated into a big deal by gossip. Maybe that's why they're so nonchalant about it in part 3.
Well, you should have asked. You should have asked him that question when you had him on your fake TV show, and made him answer. Darn it.
Yeah. I do feel lucky to have seen R. Kelly live once before he went to jail. Because, yeah, it was quite a performance. Unfortunately, he did not go through the entirety of Trapped in the Closet, harmonizing with himself on the way. That would have been an all-time great. But he went through the Ignition remix. He went through I Believe I Can Fly. Went through.
why would anybody believe that?
He's in love or something.
He went through. Remind me the title of another R. Kelly song.
I don't know any.
Yeah.
Trapped in the
Oh, well.
Closet, Chapter 1. Trapped in the Closet, Chapter 2.
That's true.
I wonder if
So I
Lucius is-
mentioned before the most memorable part of that concert for me was not in the splash zone, but in the middle of the concert he ad-libbed a line, and I'm gonna attempt it, but I can't match R. Kelly's pipes. Could I have a towel to wipe my face? 'Cause I'm sweating like a motherfucker. Ooh, I'm sweating like a motherfucker. Because this was in June in Houston, so temperatures and humidity can get fairly high. So an eager young woman from the audience happened to have a towel on hand and ran up and started toweling him off rather aggressively. But got an impression from that as to the sort of cult of personality that he had built up around himself, for better or for worse. Probably mostly for worse.
That ad-lib is telling for like just his personality, I guess, and that it kind of fits a lot of the trunk in the closet's vibe of just like he goes out of his way to sing things unnecessarily that don't need to be sung, and it just seems like he's having fun with it. Like he enjoys doing that. There's a joy throughout the work. I think and, he said he just kept writing and writing this, and he's got 20 more unreleased chapters. It seems like just something done for the sheer fun of it.
Yeah, there's a number of very beautiful parts where the backing music just drops out so that you can focus on the duet between two characters arguing, which is just R. Kelly singing in harmony with himself.
Yeah,
Like an
that's
Plays
something
opera.
into the
Mozart does a
immediacy of the
lot.
moment.
What was
Yeah,
that?
reminds me of something out of like Stephen Sondheim even.
Yeah.
But not sure where I was going with this. Apart from that, yeah, it's interesting as to how music works its way into it, even if the backing track is for the most part the very basic. You got the repeated drip, you got the bass line, you've got the dum 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 dum, and then occasionally you get the ooh ooh added just for extra intensity. And yet through that, it still seems to manage to cycle through so many different musical styles over the course of the whole opus.
I really loved the ending sequence where he kind of goes into that like they're having that chase, and it kind of goes in this Michael Jackson tribute. It was it felt very final, but it just I don't know, there was something about it where it's like I felt like he had started with that idea, like he wanted to do something that fit just an aesthetic, down to like where he goes and he changes his suits and he puts this outfit on and they have this whole conversation. And I think he probably started with that scene in mind, music, and kind of built the rest around that just to make it is a sort of forced, unnecessary confrontation. Doesn't really have much to do with the rest of the story, but it's just kind of almost like a piece of fan service or something, or that he just to kind of Ted's ending to match the initial the mob scene that ends the part two, which also felt forced, but was kind of doing it through a dream sequence and then kind of subverting things by having the monster be nice and caring for his family and such. It worked surprisingly well despite silly it was.
I guess maybe he did arrange it that way because he has this weird line about how Sylvester goes to change into something more comfortable, another suit.
Yeah, it says that
So
Tuan can't fit suits because he's gonna look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. I don't know if I've ever seen Arnold Schwarzenegger in a fitted suit. He's not in his
not sure if
prime.
he's worn one.
Probably.
He was the
He
governor.
was, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure he wore them in his office as governor or governator, whatever. But yeah, I suppose that's telling as to the back and forth between them. Almost like Sylvester is telling Tuan, like, you're not suited to adopt the comfortable domestic lifestyle that I have with Gwendolyn. You should stop trying to settle down with Tina and just accept that your solution to everything is going to be to bust a cap in everybody. You see, I feel like Tuan's role in the story is to to be a foil to Sylvester, to make him look level-headed and even. Because otherwise, Sylvester, by the frequency by which he like pulls out his gun and points it at people all the time, would look like extremely hot-blooded devil may care. But if you put him next to Tuan, who does that even more and in even more reckless situations, and suddenly Sylvester looks like the voice of reason.
Yeah, he seems to be projecting into Tuan.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like a lot of characters are sort of set up to make Sylvester's own situation look more normal and harmonious in contrast.
Well, I
I mean,
think again, you have the problem where part one follows a dramatic logic where everything has to be escalating and high tension. So the character of Sylvester and the fact that he's always pulling out a gun serves the purpose of there being this high stakes, unrolling, continuous drama. And it's only in part two and later chapters where you start to have a variety of situation where not everything has to be like this high tension unfolding. I got pulled over and I went home and I found my wife and she was cheating, but secretly the lover's in the closet, and then it's a midget, and then it's this, and then it's that. Like that falls away later, and so I think that Sylvester almost doesn't have a character because he is the personification of R. Kelly. He's the author insert, and that role stops making sense at a certain point in the story. And that's partially why you start seeing more and more characters being played by R. Kelly, because the Sylvester character no longer has a role to play in the arc of the narrative.
Potentially.
I guess as an R. Kelly vehicle, they do have to put R. Kelly in like every chapter somehow.
Something other than just the songwriter and lead singer, vocals for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. Which, I think that would have been fine if they had got a different man to play the wacky old man, but
Yeah, I mean, you can tell from interviews that R. Kelly considers Trapped in the Closet to be a deeply personal work to him, like by how he's alarmed at how it just kept rhyming and wouldn't end in his head. And he feels that it was written by aliens, and that aliens are the reason it's gone on so long. I don't know. I feel like he could just as easily impute it to divine inspiration, that some divine force inspired R. Kelly to create Trapped in the Closet.
interesting that he has
Musings.
God speak to a character in Trapped in the Closet, but it's like, yeah, it was probably aliens put this into my brain or something. I mean,
Yeah, I think that might
presumably
have
he's
been a bit of metafictional commentary as well.
mm-hmm. Presumably he doesn't actually think it's aliens. He's just like, whoa, it's crazy. It's as though aliens.
So I have a
Putting these-
theory about the God character is that Lucius has a stutter, and I sort of like to think that his stutter is a punishment for his sins. Like I don't think he was born with it, but as he's kind of degenerated into a worse and worse, just pimping monster, hitting women, etc. It's gotten worse.
He
But
does. He does seem to lose it when he's not actively talking about pimping.
which is
Which,
rare.
yeah,
He loves
like
pimping.
he
Yeah,
discusses it. He discusses his pimping in the church, and he has a stutter. And there's some other scene, like when he's talking to his girls outside of his house, he gets the stutter back. But I think he doesn't stutter when he's talking to his parents, which, I think that was probably just like, and then I wrote the lyrics, and they didn't have any place for him to stutter. But hey, maybe that's God's curse upon him.
Seems like Pimp Lucius is somebody who's cared about by the community, even if they disapprove of his pimping ways. As you can see, when the Reverend was calling on him to give up pimping for the sake of the Lord, that like his entire congregation was coming up and earnestly beseeching Pimp Lucius to give up his pimping ways for the sake of, well, the sake of the Lord, really.
Yeah, I mean, well, he probably grew up there. I mean, it seems like, because he went to high school with Sylvester. So he was probably going to that church as a child. And then he's just kind of fallen off the map. And yet they still want to save him. They don't want to save the hose. But
Wait.
Oh, are we supposed to wait for something? Or is it
Oh
Flashy
no.
who's supposed to wait?
I was supposed to wait to
Simply,
cross the street, and now I'm crossing the street.
oh,
simply picked
that's a
up on by
request.
the mic. Yeah,
Oh,
Yeah.
that authoritarian tone sounded familiar.
It doesn't pick up on the beeping ones, but I think it figures out that's supposed to be matches the profile of a human voice,
It's good at
so it doesn't
filtering
nose
out.
filter it out.
Yeah, it's good at filtering out just random background audio. But if it happens to take the form of a human voice, it tends to pick up on that annoyingly.
So yes, don't wait at all.
Yes. Wait, don't tell me.
Do we have any other thoughts about Trapped in the Closet? I feel like we haven't even plumbed the rich depths of it, but
Honestly, they could be
nothing's
a
crazy.
podcast unto itself. Could have a podcast episode just for each individual chapter of Trapped in the Closet. It merits that kind of examination. But
I suppose.
if we did want to wrap it up, I'd want to share at least one more personal
Oh
Trapped in the
yeah,
Closet related reminiscence. As I was playing a
yeah.
browser based game called Forum Wars, where essentially took control of somebody who would go on and troll forums into submission, portrayed like RPG battles with hit points and everything. But one of the little interlude things that you would do in between going on forums is to try to help out an internet denizen who is trapped, if you will, unable to complete the text adventure version of Trapped in the Closet. And so, on his behalf, you embark into it and try and solve it yourself, where it just starts you off in a closet. You open the door and you see that it's the crisp Chicago air with scents of hot dogs and pigeons and everything. And you meet R. Kelly, who greets you with a casual "Hey." And if you type most things into the command box, no matter what you type, R. Kelly is just going to pee on you to end the game right
Ooh.
there. But for full points, you can actually type in a special command to shoot R. Kelly in the dick, and therefore claim victory over him.
I was thinking the correct response would be "Don't hey me, man," which I believe is the thing they say multiple times
In Chicago,
in Trapped in the Closet when
yes.
somebody just like gives a casual greeting, but the other person is mad at them. Hey, don't hate me, man. Something along those lines. A riposte, if you will.
Yeah. Anybody else want to share their final thoughts?
I wonder if most of the human population, like over 50% of them, would enjoy R. Kelly peeing in them, just given how high status he is.
I'm gonna guess a no. That's my guess. Feel free
Hmm.
to conduct a poll and get back to me later.
I feel like it's a high percentage.
You don't
I
really. I feel like it's not really transitive. Like getting a high status person's pee on you doesn't really impart high status onto you.
That's how it works.
it would make for a good story, probably.
I
I don't
forget,
know.
Shakes.
Yeah, we
Is
could have
that
Ayla do a Twitter poll.
I was just going to ask Jakes whether there's anything about that in Ray Pete's theories.
Yeah, let's talk about Ray Pete.
Decidedly not.
Unfortunate.
I guess you should mention who Ray Pete is as context now. Now that we've wandered our way into this, just give us the one sentence summary.
Quick rundown: the Ray Pete pill.
You can just mention generally who he is or why he's relevant.
He's a biologist and is he a doctor? He's not a doctor of medicine, but he's got a doctorate in, I think, physiology or something like that in Washington. He has a lot of interesting new ideas about biology and health and fitness and nutrition that definitely to hearing.
Yeah, is for death person team.
Basis for all these kinds of methods. I mean, that's a primary driver, or like almost definitionally, status is kind of this catch-all for what is our, at least like the way we use the word in kind of post-rat speak or whatever you want to call it. And I think, a lot of at least in modern times, so we've kind of reduced sex to these dumb categories because we don't know how to love each other. So you have domination, submissive, humiliation, etc. And I think just in terms of the power dynamics of sex, I mean, really any ritual action, any human behavior, there's some kind of there's always a higher status person in the room, and you're vying for their attention and gestures from them, gifts, food, whatever it is, and that makes you look good. But transitively, it gives you some status. You have their favor, and you can lord that over other people. And so if they piss on you, you're being humiliated by them, yes, but at least you have been chosen by them as an object. At least you've been able to take their time to be pissed on, and then lord it around is it makes you better than the other people that didn't get pissed on by the high status person, because they're not go out of the way and find some they wouldn't piss on somebody ugly. They wouldn't piss on somebody they didn't care about.
They're essentially being elevated in their eyes to equal status with the toilet.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think? What do you think rain is?
God's piss?
Well, I think it's his tears, but it is sacred.
Oh yeah, I guess acid rain then.
Yeah, it is acidic.
Yeah.
It's raining on me right now.
Oof. How thematically
it's kind of
appropriate.
Uncomfortable, I suppose. It wasn't thematically appropriate 2 minutes ago, but I guess it is now.
Yeah.
Any other
God's
closing
also
thoughts?
a character in this podcast.
Yeah, a recurring character to boot.
Yes, he comes up a lot.
All right, well, I suppose we should end it, since I'm now trapped in this underpass until such a time as the rain
It's a very
stops.
nice echoing effect to set that off.
Yeah, keep your gun handy.
Yeah, that's all added in post. It's I would never sacrifice my audio quality for my own personal convenience. It's all movie magic. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. And I will now make a weird noise with my mouth. And then please end the recording.